Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webcast today on Security in the Cloud with our featured guest, Robbie Forkish. There's no question that cloud computing is a top-of-mind issue these days as we struggle to find ways to be increasingly competitive in this tough economy. But one of the major inhibitors that we're finding in terms of people adopting cloud computing strategies is a real concern about security. And, in fact, our editorial and analyst division has just started some research and that we're in the middle of now on cloud computing, and we're already finding that security is far and away the major concern that we're seeing. So, I'm Steve Taylor, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Editorial Analyst Division, and I'll be acting as your host today. I'm pleased to have with us my co-founder, Jim Metzler. Welcome, Jim.
Steve, thanks. It's great to be here today.
Additionally, we have as our guest speaker, longtime friend and associate, Robbie Forkish. Robbie's LinkedIn profile says that he's a, quote, seasoned market-savvy executive with broad-based engineering, management, and marketing experience. And believe me, that's putting it mildly. For those of you who are involved in the T1 multiplexer market, you may well remember Robbie as a co-founder and the original director of software engineering and a VP at Network Equipment Technologies, or NET. And since then, he's worked in our industry in a wide variety of areas and is, in my humble opinion, one of the true gurus that we have. So, Robbie, welcome to you.
Thank you, Steve.
And at this point, in fact, Robbie, what I'll do is just turn the program over to you, and we'll go forward from there.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. The title of my talk is Security in the Cloud. And my objective is not to provide a single answer to the question about security in the cloud, but hopefully to give you a framework for understanding what's being said today and how you can evaluate security for your own requirements. Our agenda starts us off with looking at what's going on in the analyst and blogger community, and I call that Forecasts of Doom. Then we talk about how to get out of the fog and into the cloud. The next slide focuses on what you need to know about cloud security. And then we give you security questions for your cloud vendor. Finally, we talk about, can the cloud, in fact, make you more secure? And then we share some resources for further research. So moving to the first slide. There's what Gartner calls a hype cycle that's reflected by a curve, and you can see happy cloud where the curve goes up, and that might be referred to as the peak of inflated expectations. That's Gartner's term. And then the next cycle, as we enter the valley of disillusionment, which I believe is approximately where we are now. The amplitude of this curve is very high, which means that we are officially in a state called blogger heaven. Now, there are very smart bloggers out there, and I don't mean to cast negative dispersions on the entire blogger community, but blogs get read when they're controversial. After all of the inflated expectations of the prior year or two about cloud computing, people are looking at the downside. And so what I did was I looked for the article or post that I thought most negatively reflected the downside. And I found a dark reading article in late June of 2009 entitled, Could the Cloud Lead to an Even Bigger 9/11? And in the article it says, a coordinated attack could stop a country cold with recovery taking years and massive infrastructure failures causing loss of life and resources never seen outside of an outright world war. So I've never worked on an emerging technology that had such a dire downside. But again, where there's a nugget of concern and you are informed, you have a much better means for interpreting these types of headlines and this type of information.
Robbie, just a quick question. When you talk about cloud, are you thinking just, so to speak, the public cloud, or people are often calling it private or internal cloud?
That's a great question, and that segues to my next slide, out of the fog into the cloud. There are three types of service delivery models in public clouds, and there is a distinction between public and private clouds, and for the purpose of this talk, I'm referring to public clouds.
Okay.
So the three types of service delivery are infrastructure as a service, platform as a service and software as a service. As far as software as a service, typically called SaaS, probably the most well-known example of that is Salesforce.com. They've been at it for almost 10 years, and they have about 55,000 customers worldwide now. Salesforce has actually implemented a platform as a service solution called Force.com. There's another platform as a service solution from Google called Google App Engines. And then finally, probably the most well-known infrastructure as a service is Amazon Web Service. They provide what's called a bare metal virtual service. So these are the three types of service delivery models. And in all cases, you're generally talking about a business case-driven push into the cloud. The highlights are that there's little or no upfront investment required. You can look at it as just-in-time infrastructure. You're paying only for the resources you use. And for SaaS, there's no software to deploy or manage. In fact, in most cases, you can simply point a browser at a SaaS solution, and assuming you have the proper credentials, can log in and start using it.
Robbie, quick question. Do you see a tight relationship between these three forms? The reason I'm asking that is Salesforce, if you go to their site, talks about SaaS running over PaaS, running over infrastructure as a service. So they actually have this kind of model there. All three of these are related. I don't see that happening very often. What are you seeing?
Salesforce, I think, has the most mature view of these different service delivery models and how they fold together. When Salesforce started, I think it was in 2000 or 2001, there was no real concept of cloud computing, nor infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. And they were very much pioneers in describing and defining these concepts in practice. They were very active in virtualization, and once the popular cloud definition came into play, they were immediately among the leaders in that. So they have, I think, kind of a hierarchical approach, as you've alluded to, with having software as a service on top of platform as a service on top of their virtual infrastructure or infrastructure as a service. The other two forms are fairly recent within the past couple years. There's not nearly as much of a track record, but there certainly is a bit of excitement about them.
Now, let me push back on that, Robbie. We've had colo and people have been, managing servers for a while. How do you distinguish that from infrastructure as a service?
That's a great point. And when we look at the some of the things that we need to be aware of in terms of cloud security, we'll find that they're exactly the same things you had to be aware of in having a colo service. So I think that although there are many new concepts with regard to virtualization and cloud service and service delivery models, some of the concerns that you might have, which are in effect going to manage services or outsource services, are exactly the same as you might have had over the past 5 or 10 years for these colo arrangements. So the security aspect is not entirely new to us. So in terms of thinking about these cloud services, it's very important first to understand your own requirements, to classify your applications, prioritize for cloud migration if that's what you're considering, or replacement of internal applications with SaaS, and then you adopt a security strategy that's consistent with the sensitivity and criticality of your applications and your data.